Welcome in. We're diving deep into conversational hypnosis today, but we're not just scratching the surface.
Yeah.
We're going deep, specifically on testing, with expert Virginie.
Okay.
We've got her training session notes, and let me tell you, this isn't your typical check-the-box kind of testing.
What's really interesting is how Eimer kind of flips the script on how we normally think about testing in this field.
Right.
We often think of tests as just these simple confirmations, like, yep, got that, moving on. But with conversational hypnosis, it's about uncovering these hidden, almost like secret beliefs that could totally throw things off track later on.
It's almost like preventative problem solving in a way.
Exactly. It's like, think about when you're preparing for a big presentation. You don't just want to memorize your slides, right?
Right.
You want to practice, like, how you'll handle those tough questions from the audience.
For sure.
It's about being ready for anything. And Imir really hits home that life itself, well, it's a test.
Oh, absolutely.
Think about it. Remember that time you thought you had this fear totally conquered, and then bam, it pops up again.
Yeah.
Testing in the session, though, it's like prepping for those real-life curveballs so you can handle them like a pro.
That's such a good point. It's like that old saying, practice makes perfect, but for your mind. And speaking of specifics, Imir dives into the different types of tests used in conversational hypnosis. She's got a few different approaches, and each one is designed to kind of stretch those boundaries of change.
Yeah, one approach she talks about is situational testing. So let's say you want to change a behavior that always seems to happen in a specific situation.
Okay, I'm with you.
Like, let's say, smoking after work, right?
Okay.
So the test would be like simulating that exact scenario to see how you respond with these new tools and mindset.
It's like holding up a mirror to those real-life triggers, but in a safe space. Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But she doesn't stop there.
Right.
Then there are the emotional tests.
Oh, yeah. Emotional tests are all about figuring out how someone reacts to those tough emotions. But after the hypnotic work, like imagine having a super stressful day at work, and then you have to come home to, let's say, family drama. How would you respond using what you've learned?
Wow. It's like stress testing a building, but for your emotional resilience,
Yeah.
right? You got to make sure you can handle whatever life throws at you.
Exactly.
And then there's this test that Imir calls ridiculous, which I got to say, I kind of love that.
Robert chuckles. I know, right? It's like taking those new beliefs you've developed and pushing them to the absolute extreme, like almost to the point of absurdity.
Okay, so what does that look like?
It's like, all right, you think you've conquered your fear of public speaking? Let's imagine you're giving a speech while riding a unicycle on a tightrope.
Okay, now that's a visual.
It's all about tapping into that subconscious level, where fear or doubt might still be hiding out.
Oh, I see.
And then, bam, you dismantle those fears by showing your mind just how ridiculous they are in light of the changes you've made.
It's like saying, if you can handle that crazy scenario, you can handle anything. But something else really struck me about Imir's whole approach to testing. She says it's not about the hypnotist convincing the person of the change. It's about the person convincing themselves.
Yeah. That's a really subtle but powerful distinction. Eimer's really highlighting how important it is for the person to actively participate in the process of change.
It's like they need to own it.
Right. They need to have that aha moment themselves. It can't just be told to them.
That makes so much sense. It's about creating that internal shift for lasting change. But I was really surprised by the emphasis Imir puts on challenging the client's own idea of success. Like even when they say, hey, I feel better, she doesn't just accept that at face value.
That's such a crucial part. Even if a client says, I feel better, the hypnotist digs a little deeper. Asking questions like, how do you know it's better? Or what feels different now can really get them thinking.
Instead of that, okay, great, you're cured mentality.
Exactly. It's more like, okay, you're on the right track, but let's make sure this change is here to stay.
I like that. So it's not just about feeling better in the moment, but making sure that feeling sticks around. And Imir actually uses a case study to really bring this to life. A client named Lena who was having a hard time working from home because of, well, clutter.
Yeah, and it's interesting because on the surface, it's like, okay, clutter, we've all been there.
Right, but for Lena, it went deeper. She connected her ability to focus with her environment being organized. But here's where it gets fascinating. Testing brought out the deeper reasons behind that struggle. It wasn't just about a few piles of papers, was it?
Exactly. It's like, that saying, our homes are a reflection of our minds. Well, it's like that. Through the testing, Imir starts to see these fascinating links that Lena's making between being organized, her ideas about whether stuff is actually useful or not, and even things from her past.
Wow, so it's like this tangled ball of beliefs starts to unravel. But I'm curious about how this testing actually plays out in a session. Like, how does it actually work?
Well, Imir's really big on testing the symptom itself.
Oh, okay.
So for Lena, it wasn't enough to just say she felt better about all that clutter. Eimer actually had her imagine herself working in her home office, but with the clutter still there.
That's interesting. So instead of just talking about it, they dove right into the heart of the issue, right?
Yeah, exactly. And this is where that whole idea of self-persuasion that Eimer talks about comes in.
Okay.
She asks Lena, imagine you're trying to work from home right now. How does that feel?
I would be so curious to know what happened next.
Well, Lena's response is really telling. She's like, yeah, I can imagine it, but
Ooh, that butt is doing a lot of work there.
right. That but is like a giant red flag.
Ah,
It tells Ymir that, maybe Lena's conscious mind is on board with the change, but her subconscious is holding back.
it's like our subconscious is trying to tell us something, but in this, like, secret code, right?
Yeah.
And we need someone like Ymir to help us understand it.
Exactly. And it's in those moments that a hypnotist's ability to really listen, like beyond just the words themselves, that's key.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So Ymir uses that but as a chance to dig a little deeper. She challenges Lena just a bit on how she knows she's feeling better. She asks, how do you know it's better? Or what's different now? Those kinds of questions.
Because it's easy to say we feel different, but until we really get why, that change might not last, right?
Exactly. And by gently pushing in this way, something amazing happens. Lena realizes she's got this deep-seated belief that getting organized means getting rid of stuff, even if it's still useful.
Wow, so it wasn't even about the clutter itself, but about what it meant to her.
Exactly. It turned out that for Lena, putting things away meant they were basically gone. She was afraid that if she couldn't see it, it didn't exist anymore.
That's a huge realization, and I bet you wouldn't have gotten there without this whole testing process.
Definitely not. Eimer's role isn't to tell Lena what's wrong, but to guide her so she sees it for herself. It's when you have that aha moment that real change happens.
I love that. So how did they work on shifting that belief about organization?
Well, they work together to reframe it, to see that organization isn't about, like, banishing your belongings.
It's about creating a system for them.
Exactly. But true to form, Eimer doesn't stop there. She wants to challenge those first impressions of success.
I bet this is where that ridiculous test would come in.
It could, but in this case, Eimer takes a more playful approach. Lena's talking about how much better she feels about her clutter now, and Eimer kind of jokingly says, oh yeah, so are you finally going to tackle those boxes in the basement that have been there for 10 years?
I love that.
It was a way to gently point out any resistance, areas where the change maybe hadn't fully sunk in yet.
That's so smart. And so did Lena hesitate.
Oh, absolutely. She was like, well, and that told Ymir everything she needed to know.
There was more work to do.
Yeah. So they dug back in, looking at those doubts and hesitations. Ymir even pointed out how Lena kept using the word but throughout the session, like it was a little clue from her subconscious.
It's like those little buts are breadcrumbs leading back to the real issue. This is so different from regular therapy where you mostly just talk about things.
Right. Conversational hypnosis isn't just talking about change, it's about actively participating in it.
Yeah.
Using things like testing to create real shifts in how we think, feel, and act.
It's like Ymir is saying, don't just tell me you've changed, show me.
Exactly. And it's in that showing, that active participation, that we truly make the change our own.
This is mind-blowing. But I imagine the real test comes after the session's over, when someone's back in their everyday life with all those temptations. So how does Ymir get her clients ready for that? Because, it's one thing to feel confident when you're with a therapist,
Right?
but it's totally different when you're back in the real world.
Yeah, it's like you can have all the best intentions,
Right.
but then life throws you a curveball.
Exactly. So how does Ymir bridge that gap? How do you take what you learned in the session and actually apply it out in the world?
Well, she builds in time at the end of every session for what she calls a dialogue of integration.
Okay, I like that.
It's all about getting the client ready for what to expect when they go back to their life, but now, with these new tools...
It's like you're not just handed a toolkit and then good luck.
Right, it's about setting realistic expectations from the get-go. Change is a journey.
It's not a quick fix.
Exactly. She helps them come up with plans for those times when The old ways of thinking, those old habits, try to creep back in.
So it's empowering them to own the change, even when it gets tough. It makes me think that we're so focused on that finish line of personal growth. But maybe it's more about getting comfortable with the ups and downs along the way.
Ammer actually talks about those potentially challenging moments as chances to really integrate the change even more.
Interesting.
So instead of thinking of those setbacks as failures,
Right.
they're actually opportunities, valuable feedback.
I like that.
It's a chance to practice those new skills, really solidify the commitment to change.
It's like you're not just learning the steps to a dance, you're learning how to recover when you miss a step.
That's a great way to put it.
This has been so eye-opening. It's not about pretending you can erase the past.
Yeah.
It's about being the author of your own story moving forward.
And knowing how to handle the plot twists when they come up.
Exactly. The whole approach is just amazing, giving people the power to change their own lives.
It really is about recognizing that we all have this incredible ability to grow and transform.
You do.
But it's a process. It takes being aware, being committed,
It's the long game.
and being willing to embrace those testing moments, both in the therapy room and out in the world.
As we wrap up this deep dive into Imir's work, I'm feeling really hopeful.
Me too.
It's like, it's not magic, it's a method.
Right.
It reminds me of that quote, the only way out is through. You can't just think your way out of old patterns. You have to actually practice new ways of being.
You got it. It's been fantastic exploring all of this with you.
Likewise. Likewise.
If our listeners take away just one thing from this,
Yeah.
I hope it's that they have the power to make lasting change in their own lives.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
This conversation has totally changed how I think about challenges,
Oh, that's great to hear.
both in therapy and just in everyday life. Now, here's something for you to think about as you go about your day. Remember a time you tried to make a change in your life? Big or small, it doesn't matter. What tests did you face? How did you handle those moments when you doubted yourself or wanted to give up? And maybe, just maybe, understanding these ideas about testing in conversational hypnosis can help you approach change with more awareness, more resilience,
For sure.
and a little more kindness toward yourself. Remember, transformation isn't about being perfect.
It's about progress.
It's about progress.
Right.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions,
Keep going.
and keep diving deep.